Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. We are very fortunate today. We have Tom from Goblin King Games with us, the team behind Moonstone the game. So Tom, thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Andy. And hi, everyone.
So I guess today there'll be some folks who are maybe not aware of Moonstone and are maybe not have kind of seen the faces behind it before. I know that this summer I feel like Moonstone kind of got a real wind behind its sails this summer with the convention season, and I feel like there was a lot of buzz and a lot of chat about your stuff. So did you feel that as well? I mean,
Massively.
I'm assuming
Yeah.
that was intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional. So I went full time in January. I've been ticking away on Moonstone as kind of a hobby thing on the side, doing in my evenings and weekends. And it got to the point at the end of last year where I thought, you know what, I can actually quit my job and make a full-time gig of this, which is living the dream. You know, I'm in a studio with all my toys all around me. I've got my dog. It's like lovely forests all around. I come in and just do Moonstone all day. I thought I'd get to do a bit more of the artistic, creative side, but there's been an awful lot of logistics and whatnot. But anyway, I'm still living the dream. But obviously, because I'm full time, I've been able to go to conventions and do a bit more online marketing, and get my face out there a bit more, do things like this that I
Yeah.
couldn't really fit it in last year very easily when I had a full time job as well. So just giving it that little bit of a poke, just putting it in front of a few more people, and it's just absolutely exploded. I'm
Yeah.
just crazy busy, just sort of fulfilling retailer orders all the time, and it's really really kicked off. I couldn't hope for more, to be honest.
Oh, I'm really glad because I've sort of watched you on previous interviews before, and you made a comment which kind of I completely understood when you said it, and it was essentially that basically when it comes to convention season, get using your weekends to go to conventions. It was the weekends you were using to work on
Exactly.
Moonstone. So
Yeah,
it was a case of
exactly.
yeah, if I'm doing that, I'm not actually getting any work done, kind of thing. So yeah, I can
In a
completely
strange way,
understand that.
I was lucky that COVID sort of landed when it did, because there wasn't very many conventions for a couple of years, and if
Yeah,
there was, I wouldn't have been able to go to them anyway at that stage in sort of my development process of Moonstone.
yeah,
Because we were saying just before the call, just briefly, a lot of people that start a games company worked in a games company. You know, most people start their own business in any industry, already worked in that industry, and they potentially sort of learn the ropes, thought, God, my boss is an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing, I could do it so much better, and they sort of, they're up and running. I just sort of jumped into it, and I know it's the same for you, Andy, just sort
yeah.
of jumped into it thinking, I've got this idea, let's just see how far it goes. I originally just made it for myself and my friends. It was the game that I wanted to play, with all the artistic references that I wanted in there, and the sort of the gameplay styles that I enjoyed and my friends enjoyed.
Yeah.
I never imagined it would be my full-time job. It's absolutely wicked. So
And
yeah.
how do you feel? How's it living up to the dream then? Because I've got my own opinions on everybody goes, oh, you're living the dream with you everybody else's hobbies what you do for a living, and
Yeah, I know.
I don't feel like that when I'm kind of doing my tax returns and when I'm
No,
trying
that's the
when
thing.
I'm
I
trying to be
underestimated how much
exactly, yeah,
boring stuff there was to do to run a games company. I thought it would be 20% boring stuff, 80% playing games, designing games.
yeah,
Like I look forward to those, Friday afternoons where I'm like, right, that's it. I'm not answering any more emails. I'm ignoring everyone. I'm just going to do a bit of game design. But I brought
yeah,
on a couple of really talented people to help out. I've got Joe Parsons, who was my sort of head play tester.
yeah.
He's doing more of the game development side and stuff. I'm giving away the fun bits. It's a shame because I can't get anyone to do the
That's
boring
what
bits.
happens. Yeah,
But he's brilliant at designing characters and going off and play testing them. So that and I obviously stick my oar in all the time and tinker with
yeah,
things to steer it in various directions. But I really trust him to do an amazing job. And the new characters that have just come out, he's super excited about, because they're the first characters that he's written the rules for.
right.
So he's well stoked about that, and they're really good. He's taken some very very innovative angles on some of the play styles, which is really cool. But I've got Joe doing development. I've got Susie, also known as VG Thorne, doing the narrative and helping out with marketing, and they're both really excellent. So I've got a little bit of help, and I've roped in most of my family, because obviously it's busy around Christmas time. So some
Yeah.
days I've got my mum, my dad, and my niece all in next door packing boxes. for
That's
people.
that's the way to do it. You've got to rope in help whenever you can get it, especially when you kind of in those early stages of kind of growing a business as well. And it's friends and family very actively get roped in, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's all going really well. It's been, as good a year as I could have hoped. It's been really nice bringing the dog into work
yeah,
and being able to set my own timetable. Although
yeah,
that basically means having 0 days off. I've realised setting your own timetable means you work every single
yeah.
day.
Who,
But
who
yeah.
knew? Who knew that it wasn't 9 or 5? I
Yeah.
never expected that to happen. So
Yeah.
I guess what we'll do is then, because there'll be some folks who may be completely new to Moonstone and new to Goblin King games, give us a little bit of background. Where did Moonstone come from? How long has it been around? Where are we now, kind of thing?
So Moonstone is the wonderfully whimsical fantasy skirmish game. I'm sure all of you viewers are familiar with skirmish games, small number of model counts, alternating activations. If you've played Guild Ball, Malifaux, those kind of things, you'll be familiar with that kind of basis. That was a style of game. I love all games. I love card games, board games, role play games. I love all games. I don't get much time to play them, but I do love them. And I wanted to make a skirmish game because it was my favourite style of game.
Yeah,
But I wanted to bring in some ideas I had, basically. I was helping my friend out with a sci-fi themed sort of Necromunda-ish game, helping him out write the rules and play test that. And whilst I was working on that with him, I was thinking, this is good fun game, great fun game, really, really enjoying it. But if it was my game, I would do this and I would do that. And I was very keen on using cards for the mechanics
yeah,
in a way which is really, really interactive. So rather than rolling a dice, I'm looking for a 5 to hit. Oh, bugger, I rolled a 2. Never mind, right, it's your go now. I wanted the combat, because I did, when I had time, historical European martial arts. So I was very used to fighting with swords and spears and shields and daggers and things, in competitive,
yeah.
judged competition kind of thing.
Awesome.
I wanted that feel where every move has a counter move, and I can go for this big hit, but I'm leaving myself open, or I can play more cautious and just wait for the opening to emerge. And I was thinking, there isn't really a game with mechanics that do that. It's all abstracted down to dice, generally, 99% of the time, or flip of a card or whatever. It's randomized. I was thinking, but in real combat, you've got decisions to make every single moment. So I came up with this idea of a melee mechanic where you draw a hand of cards, your opponent draws a hand of cards, and you've got different combat moves, things like falling swing and high guard and thrust, and they have different profiles and they counter one another in different ways. So if you don't like the look of this fight, you might go for one of the guards because it's got very low damage output and input. If you think you can read your opponent, and there are ways and means of doing it by looking at your own hand, looking at their card, looking at your card, looking what benefits you've each got. It's a small deck of cards, so you can, if you've got all the high guards, they don't have them as well. So you're analysing all this information, thinking, what do I go for? Do I go for the obvious attack, but he might play the perfect counter? Do I play, you can basically, you make your decision, you and your opponent go 3, 2, 1, reveal, and on your card, you find the name of your opponent's card and it tells you what happens in that matchup.
Yeah.
So I kind of had that idea brewing in my head whilst I was helping my friend out with his game. And I thought, I might as well just make a prototype, invite a couple of friends around, see if they like it. And they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. We love it. It's so good. Yeah. Anyway, they said that. So I thought, okay, cool. I'll come up with a card mechanic for the magic then, the arcane and the ranged attacks, because obviously this mechanic was for combat. And I thought, well, it works quite nice having a little quick breakaway, quick game cards. You both kind of reveal, the whole double bluffing thing. I'll come up with a slightly different mechanic for magic, which is our arcane deck, which is a bluffing mechanic. You, as the spellcaster, are looking for certain colours or certain numbers to get certain effects. You've both got a hand of cards. You get to play your card face down and declare what it is. Your opponent calls a bluff or not. You either get punished or rewarded. So it's still a little quick game of cards. One's a sort of a rock, paper, scissors-y kind of inspired game. The other's a bluffing kind of push your luck kind of game. And it just felt more engaging because you're always making decisions. You're always, if you're moving your pieces, your opponents are making decisions whether to make reaction steps. When you're attacking them, they're making their decisions whether they're gonna, fight you back, and just go for mutual destruction or play defensive and wait for someone or the other. people to come in. So there's no period of downtime when you're playing
Yeah.
Moonstone, which is I think why it sort of resonated with people. And the rules themselves, apart from these little card games, are quite clean and simple because I wanted it to be at that sort of easy to get into kind of level. You know, the rules
Yeah.
you don't ever need to look up pages of tables or look up what does stealth mean in the look on page 46. There's none of that. It's just 16 pages of rules. The characters have got unique abilities on the cards. Keep the rules nice and simple so that there's plenty of headspace for people to do these little mind games and little breakaway card games and things. So that's how it came about. I just made a prototype. I had a lot of fun sourcing miniatures from other people's ranges and things like that. And I was massively into, because I went to art college and then moved into graphic design, but I was always into fantasy art, and I really love Brian Froud, who's the art director behind The Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. So his art books are a massive inspiration. I had the books when I was a kid, and I used to pore through his books called Goblins and Fairies and things like that, and it's absolutely soaked into the aesthetic of Moonstone. There's hopefully no obvious rip-off of his characters, but every time a character comes out, I want it to look like if it dropped into the Labyrinth as a new character in the Labyrinth, it wouldn't look out of place. If you drop it in the Labyrinth and it looks like it belongs there, it's good for Moonstone.
Yeah, I did a video. I did a live stream a little while ago, and I was talking about basically kind of how to play Moonstone, or how to get started. And I think one of my first lines was kind of it's kind of Jim Henson Labyrinth type thing.
Exactly.
So it's definitely not a rip off of those kind of things, but you're exactly right. You can see the inspirations there, and it's interesting to hear it from yourself.
Yeah, so that was it really. I had ideas for mechanics based on sort of my experience with other skirmish games and wanting to get the kind of real feel of combat, ranging, stepping in and out, but simplifying it down to a system that will work for all characters and is quite easy to learn. And that clicked quite quickly really. I just made the first iteration was a tad more complicated because there were 8 different combat moves instead of 6, and you had 2 different play modes. Got rid of those bits after the first test. I thought it doesn't really need it. But the arcane and the melee mechanics came together quite quick, and then it was just the long process of designing characters because I had millions of ideas in my head, and I was sketching because I was just like, oh, it'd be fun to sketch like a goblin with a massive barrel on his back and a little candle, and I was drawing those just for fun. So I had loads of ideas, but then to move from just ideas to then getting art done, sculpts done, molds made, selling them, all of the costs involved in that, I had to sort of build up slowly. So my first sort of dip, I did a little Kickstarter for the Fire Spitter miniature, which is the goblin with the barrel on his back. And it was just a Kickstarter for that one model, and there were free rules download if anybody wanted to play with them, but there wasn't really any other models to play with back then, and that went surprisingly well. It covered its costs and a little bit more, so I was like, oh good, I've got a little bit more money to spend now on art. Chucked in some money, some of my own money or my own savings, enough to get enough art and a couple of sculpts done to launch our first Kickstarter for the game, which went really well. It didn't make me any money because all the money got spent on, fulfilling it. All the sculpts that we were doing and the shipping and the making of it and everything. But by that point, there was now 200 people that had bought the core game and had it. So just grew it. Every time I sold a box, I was like, oh good, I can pay for another piece of art now or another sculpt. And I think we're up to nearly 100 characters now, which is a really good place to be. And we've got a roadmap for about another 100 more. Just sort of ideas all kind of maps out for like different mechanics and different creative styles I want to flesh out. So it's a good time to get into Moonstone because it's kind of established and stable enough. The rules are really stable. They're very balanced, very competitive. We got sort of enough models that you can kind of pick a play style or an aesthetic style that you like. But then we've also got, we've got our first 2 books here, and we are just starting our 3rd. So the new releases, which we're just shipping out at the moment, lots of people hopefully buying them for their Christmas stockings and things. Those 3 boxes that have just come out now are these ones. They are the first 3 boxes from our book 3. What I've learned from some other companies is it's annoying basically when you get a book and it's full of characters and you can't buy the models.
Yeah.
Because our box sets come with the stat cards in, you can buy a box and you can play with it straight away. And then the book can come out a little bit later and kind of fill you in with the storyline, bring new modes of play. Got ideas for maybe it's too soon to say, but I've got ideas for mechanical things, gameplay variants and things that can come in the next book, as well as all the new characters, and the storyline will develop. The storyline is quite interesting, actually. In the first book, it's just a collection of short stories. There's no storyline as such. It just kind of introduces you to the world. Starting in this book, an actual storyline develops. It's 14 chapters that kind of takes you through why people are collecting moonstones, and something really bad happens at the end. And then obviously our book 3 and book 4 will be the kind of continuation of that story. A hero is going to arise. Interestingly, he's one of our new releases. Eric, not painted yet, I'm afraid, but Eric the Enlightened. So in our starter set, he's the squire. So a lot of people, anyone who's ever got into Moonstone knows Eric. He's got like this cute little guy with a wooden sword. And we did a community event in the summer where we said Eric's going to grow up. He's going to be a knight. There's something special about him. It's something in his blood. He's destined to be the savior of this big bad problem. So all the factions want him. So everybody submitted their games. We made a special version of Eric that would work for each faction, slightly buffed and sort of steered towards each faction. So he's undecided. He doesn't know whichever faction wins the most games. That's what he'll join.
Yeah.
That's well over 200 games submitted. Can't remember what it came to now in the end, but it was a lot. So much more than I thought we would get. And Leshervolt, which is our forest-dwelling, spirits forms, sort of a little bit creepy. They've got a weird kind of religion about sort of death and the life cycle. That was the faction that won. So we had 3 different pieces of art, sort of very early stage art done, and 3 sort of very early stage rules. And we went ahead with this Leshervolt one. Yeah. So you'll be seeing more of him. You'll be seeing more of his story. And how he influences things in our upcoming books as well. So, basically, the upshot is there's lots of exciting stuff in the future to keep us busy for several years, I'd have thought.
It's lovely to hear as well, because it's like you can feel like there's obviously a massive amount of passion there from yourself, but you can also feel the story that you've told about how the game's grown and how it's developed over time, and from that one miniature to kind of like the first set of rules, and even the story for the arc of everything is has grown, and now you've got that kind of vision down the line.
It's so frustrating because I can't wait to tell people, but I know what the big finale is going to be, and it's going to be absolutely epic, but it's years down the line. But I'm not well known for keeping secrets, but
I think that's one that you should definitely hang on to. I wouldn't divulge that one just yet. But I mean, but it's interesting going back to kind of talking about how the game came about, and the card decks for the arcane magic and for ranged for melee combat. It's if I could put a wish list together of all of, because I never professed to be a game designer. I'm not one of these people that tinkers with rules or anything like that. I like to play kind of other people's games, but it's not my forte. But if I could put a wish list together of all the bits and pieces that I love in games, I think Moonstone kind of ticks all those boxes. I love to have something a little bit more sort of innovative in a game, because I talked about this recently I do a Patreon podcast every month, and I talked about the lack of innovation in tabletop gaming. There's so many games that are just variations on the dice mechanic. There's a set of stats, there's a set of dice, and there's a set of miniatures, and kind of it's there's not much difference between them. But Moonstone has a lot of differences.
Thank you, I really appreciate that. I think being just a person gives you, who doesn't have huge wage bills of these big companies. They've got shareholders. They can't necessarily take big risks, because if they pour loads and loads of money into a massive games range that's all paid up in advance and all manufactured in China with really expensive metal molds, and it doesn't resonate with people, that's a big problem for them.
Yeah.
Whereas because I didn't have any of those kind of constraints, and I was just sort of trying, oh yeah, that works, okay, I'll build on it. Oh, people like that, okay, good, I can carry on then. It gave me a little bit of freedom potentially that some of the bigger companies don't have, to try something out a bit more innovative.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's paid off.
Yeah, I think so, and I guess it's like things like I love having the stats on cards in front of me. I hate the idea of having to constantly flick through books and stuff like that, constantly kind of read it and stuff. The fact that, like you said yourself, the rules kind of sink in, and once you've read them once or twice, you're kind of playing the game. You're not reading the book anymore. And I think the card mechanic of using cards instead of dice is massively underused. It allows for so much innovation and so much sort of change to a standard game, if you like. If I can just lump everything together as a standard game, I think
I love cards.
Yeah, I do.
I think they're amazing. You can do so much more with a card than a dice.
Yeah,
If you want
yeah,
a random number generator, cards can do that for you.
yeah,
If you want to have secret information that's either temporary or lasts for ages, cards can do that
yeah,
for you. You can have a whole table of information. You can have special rules. You can do so much with cards.
yeah,
I've got several ideas for future games, and they all use cards.
yeah.
Not the same way as Moonstone, but they all
Yeah.
use cards. I just think it's the best tool that a game designer's got in their arsenal, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm massively surprised that not more games use cards. Like, I love the fact that, like, there's that memory to a deck of cards that, like, if I've got a card, then I know you haven't
You
got
don't
it.
have
Like,
it.
yeah, like I
exactly.
love that ability, and it's just like you say, there's so many ways to use it, and it's massively underutilized. I think it's people fall into the trap of, well, everyone loves dice kind of thing, or
The other thing I love about cards is you can randomize before decisions, which is really, really cool.
yeah,
Like, if you're using dice, you have to make your decisions, then the randomness happens. Usually, there are some
yeah,
games where the dice give you a pool of options or whatever, but normally you do all your strategy, then the dice tell you whether you're lucky or not.
yeah,
With cards, normally the randomness happens first, then you make your decisions,
yeah,
which keeps the player agency until the very last moment, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Even if you haven't been lucky, you might still, by being clever, make it work to your advantage, which is how it works in
yeah,
Moonstone and the other game ideas that I've got in my mind. That I want to keep that aspect.
yeah.
You don't ever want to feel that frustration of, well, I did everything exactly right, but the dice just said no.
Yeah.
I do like dice games. I mean, Blood Bowl's one of my favorite games, and it's ancient now. It's been kicking around for 35 years, and it's incredibly swingy with dice. So
Yeah.
I'm not a total downer on dice all round.
No.
I just think there's potentially better ways to do it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Dice have their place, and I like swinginess in games as well, because like I like that kind of that underdog story sometimes, and the David and Goliath, and sometimes it can happen because the dice were with you that point in time. I guess it's just the fact that you don't see alternatives often enough. I think that's what I would say.
That swinginess and that David and Goliath can absolutely happen in Moonstone as well, because even if you're attacking someone and they've only got one wound left, you're not guaranteed to kill them. They might pull the perfect defense that perfectly counters you and get a free hit on you, and they happen to have pocketed, a critical attack and it can turn very dramatically.
Yeah.
But it was the players that influenced that. The player made the choice that caused that huge and memorable turn of events, potentially.
Well, that's it. Like that, sitting and hanging on to that card until the opportune moment. It creates that story, but it's like I did that. Like I planned for that kind of thing. So you get the best of both worlds.
And those moments where you reveal the card and there's that tension as you reveal, and you see them, and one player goes, yes, always, and the other one's like, oh no. Usually.
Oh, definitely.
It's quite exciting.
I guess I'd say as well, another thing with Moonstone is the miniatures are absolutely beautiful, and I think it's you manage to capture the artwork that we see, that I've got some in front of me here actually for the new stuff, but the artwork that you capture is replicated really, really well in the miniatures as well. I've seen some stuff in the past from other companies where the idea isn't always kind of captured in the final product, but yours definitely
Yeah,
are.
we keep it really close. This guy's I'm just painting him at the moment, but Bjorn, I don't know if you can make out, and he's in the middle there. This one's actually finished. Yeah, I have very good sculptors and very, very good artists. It was one of the things when I first started out. People don't get into games unless it looks great. The first thing is it has to look great. Second thing, it has to play great. And the third thing is they get into the lore and the narrative side and think, actually, this is a really interesting world.
Yeah.
But it happens always in that order.
Yeah.
So if you don't have amazing art and sculpts, it doesn't matter if you've got amazing rules and amazing lore, in my opinion. You'll just never get noticed because it's such a crowded market. But yeah, we do keep our don't know if you can see that very well. Our sculpts and our art really, really closely aligned. So that if people see a piece of art on a preview or something, they know exactly sort of what the final miniature is going to look like.
As you said, you've got 2 books out at the moment. The first one was the original kind of is that the original rule book, if you like, the first one?
Yeah, this are core rules.
Yeah.
So it's 100 odd pages. It's got a bit of info on all the characters, some story scenarios, maps, the history of the world, painted miniature pictures, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
And then we brought out in a second Kickstarter, well, probably a third, maybe a fourth, Kickstarter at the end of 2021, and we fulfilled it in 2022. Our Arising, so it's our first expansion book. So it brings another 50 characters, which are all now released, and they're all painted up and in my cabinet. And this project is now concluded. But this has got campaign rules in it.
Okay,
so if you want to link your games together, it works best really with 4 or more players. So Moonstones grow, and you're all fighting over them, and you as Baron Von Fancy Hat or Eric the Squire or whatever, you don't really know why you're digging them up. You just know that the wizards in the Tower of Grommel are paying an absolute fortune for them. And this storyline in here explains why they're paying a fortune for them and what's going on. But if you want to play a campaign, you play as one of the wizards in the Tower of Grommel, and you are trying to collect as many Moonstones as possible, and you are hiring gnomes or fairies or whatever you choose to go out and get Moonstones on your behalf. So you're playing games of Moonstone with the troop that you're hiring, and they are potentially gaining upgrades game from game as they get more skillful. So we have these upgrade cards that you can equip to give a bit of progression. But there's also a new layer on top. So I like my layers and within layers when I'm doing game design. So you've got the card games within the skirmish game. Then there's kind of another layer that sits on top when you're playing a campaign where you are one of the wizards and you're plotting and scheming against all the other wizards. So there's kind of a betting mechanic that goes on where you can effectively bet on the outcome of other people's games with a support and sabotage. And if you support somebody, you give them extra event cards, these campaign cards that lets them play tricks during their game. And if they win, you get a bonus. You sabotage someone, you take their cards away from them. And if they lose, you get a bonus. But the bonuses you get are not equal. So you don't always support the person who's winning because you get virtually no reward if you support the person who's winning. Whereas if you support the person who's losing and you give them a bonus and they go on to win, you get a reward as well. So it's kind of a player organically enforced rubber banding where you can plot and scheme and you can say, I'll support you if you support me. You can make all these kind of alliances, play tricks on one another by playing these cards in between games. And then on game night, you usually will find that the players that are currently doing less well are given an advantage in their games because they've got more sneaky tricks to play during the game than the person who's doing well. So it's quite good fun. It's incredibly memorable. I've done maybe 6 playtest campaigns, and they are some of the most memorable games I've ever played because the campaign deck that's got all these tricks that you can basically play during the game make for this is my dad. I'm on a video recording.
Hello.
I'm printing.
My dog.
Sorry to
Awesome.
disturb.
No worries. So I was just basically saying it creates these incredibly memorable experiences where you can
Yeah,
assassinate other people's characters in between games and create these incredible power plays, which are, way above the power curve of what you would normally get in a Moonstone game.
yeah.
Anyway, it creates some very memorable moments. So the rules for that came out in this book, and
Awesome.
then yes, we have ongoing plans for more books and more game variants and things in the future.
Yeah, I love the sound of that. I love the idea of how, like, if you're not doing quite so well, you're going to start to get a little bit of support from other people to kind of back you up and rooting for you to come on and win. It's one of those things where when you do kind of leagues and campaigns, people can quite often get left behind.
That's exactly the thing. That's exactly why I went this way, because I've played in campaigns where there are win more mechanics. So
Yeah,
whoever is winning gets given more rewards.
yeah,
And then that's really fun if you are winning, or even if you're mid-table. But if you're at the bottom and you're already perhaps not the most experienced player, and now you're playing with an army or a team or whatever that's worse than your opponent, who was
yeah,
already the more experienced player, it can be a bit demoralizing. And I've seen campaigns, everybody starts with excitement, and then by sort of halfway point, some people are like, "Oh, I want this to end. I want to start something
yeah,
else now."
yeah.
So with the Moonstone campaigns, you never know who's going to win until the last minute, and
I
it
love.
so
Yeah,
often happens that someone that's just sort of keeping quiet, playing their little strategies and schemes on the lowdown, not drawing too much attention to themselves, is the person that's in like the prime position to sort of
yeah.
shoot up at the end. So yeah, they always have exciting climaxes. You can never tell who's going to win until the last game of the campaign is in. So that's
I love
nice.
that. I love that. So one question I've got then for those folks that are new to Moonstone and don't know about it, you mentioned yourself you're up to about 100 different characters now, and there is am I right in saying there's 3 factions at the moment? Is there a fourth
Yeah, there's
maybe on our
three.
way?
That's right. Yeah, spot on. So what I was kind of inspired by was, this is going to seem like a weird reference, but Magic the Gathering's only got 5 colors. But that doesn't mean there's 5 decks to play.
Yeah,
There's millions. So I like the idea of um, a small number of factions, but there's lots of different ways that you can construct your troop. We call them, or
yeah,
warband or whatever in other games. So there's various combos, there's various keywords that you can synergize around, and we sell our box sets in groups of 3 that are designed to work really nicely together. They're artistically and thematically linked, but they're also mechanically linked. So there's little tricks you can play between the characters that come in the boxes, and you normally have like a healer and a melee character and a support character. So you can
yeah,
kind of buy one box and then just buy another box from the same faction, and you're going to have something that will work quite nicely.
yeah,
So I wanted that sort of modular, expandable kind of feel. So you can kind of pick a faction and then you can sort of branch out in lots of different ways. Just add on one more box and you've got a whole different play style, because those two will synergize differently than those two do.
yeah,
So yeah, a lot of people, when the game first came out, there was only 2 factions, and people were like, "What? 2 factions?" But it wasn't. Back in those days, it was Commonwealth and Dominion, but within Commonwealth, you had humans and gnomes, and you had goblins and fairies. Now, there's a third faction, which is Leshavult, which is mostly cultists and spirits. So if you just want to build around a racial keyword, you just buy, you can just get the 2 human boxes, or
yeah,
now there's 3 or 4 of them, but you pick which ones you like. But then we also started building in like profession synergy. Profession isn't the word I'm looking for, like class.
yeah,
So you might build around rogues, for example. So you're not looking for fairies now, you're looking for characters with the rogue keyword. And you can see that it sort of opens out like a cone, the options.
yeah,
Every time we add one new box set to the range, it doesn't just add 3 new models to play. It kind of opens up maybe 4 new different list types that you can now build.
yeah,
So it's in a, like I said earlier, it's in like a really nice place where there's lots and lots of options. But we do have plans for a 4th faction. So we'll carry on adding models to these existing 3.
Yeah.
And then probably around the summer next year, we'll probably do a Kickstarter for a 4th faction.
Awesome.
It'll be, lots of limited editions and alternate sculpts and things like that for Kickstarter backers, because it really does massively help us, because the cost of paying for all the art and sculpts and stuff is really quite significant. So having a Kickstarter where you basically get the money in first is just a massive help when you're planning something big like a new faction launch.
Yeah,
we don't do everything through Kickstarter. Most of our releases are direct to retail, but when it's something big like that, we do.
I think it's one of those things. I think people have become a bit sort of almost used to Kickstarter now, to the point where like Kickstarter is still used for stuff like you're explaining, for smaller companies still growing, to allow them to kind of move forward and to be able to kind of do those bigger releases. And then you have big companies who use it as a marketing platform, essentially.
Yeah,
as well. And I think sometimes people can become a little bit numb to it a bit, and a bit down on Kickstarter. But without it, we wouldn't have the tabletop industry we've got now. And I think people have to realise
wouldn't have Moonstone. It would have been impossible. Absolutely impossible. I would, like I said, I was funding it sort of step by step. Kickstarter was the only way to get, that tens of thousands in that you need to launch a full game, because it does cost tens of thousands of pounds to make a full game. If I went to the bank and said, "Hey, I've got this idea for these little gnomes and goblins, and people are going to play them, and will you give me a loan for like £70,000?" They'd have said, "Have you ever worked in this industry? Show me." It wouldn't exist. Moonstone wouldn't exist. So
that's it.
For me, Kickstarter did what Kickstarter's kind of mission objective was, which is kickstart fresh creative projects that otherwise couldn't happen. But it has become more competitive. I think if you have an idea now and you want to, as I did 5 or 6 years ago, and you want to go onto Kickstarter, I think customers' expectations, because there are so many big companies using it for pre-ordering. You have to reach a higher level, I think, of art and sculpt, and you have to prove more now, I think, than you did back then. I think back then, sort of doing a video of yourself going, "Hi, I'm just a normal guy with an idea. I got a few things that I've made. They're cool, aren't they?" Was enough. Now you practically need to present a finished product, just because so many other people are doing that.
Yeah, and it's tough because, like as I said, we wouldn't have the tabletop industry that we've got now, because you basically had a few bigger companies who could afford to make new stuff. And I think what's happened is companies like yourself, who because of Kickstarter have enabled, like you say, those really unique ideas that bigger companies wouldn't take a chance on. It's enabled them to come to a tabletop and come to an audience, and then that's pushed on other companies to raise their games and raise the quality of their sculpts and raise the quality of the art in their books. So I think we're in a nice, healthy situation as a consumer.
So. I feel like I've heard this phrase banded about the golden age of gaming. I feel like we are in the golden age of gaming at the moment, where there's a huge amount of option for customers. And it's just a really exciting time. There's companies from tiny all the way up to massive. You can sort of dive in wherever you want. I think it's a great time, and it's, for me personally, if this had been 1990 and I had this idea, I'd have never have made it. So that's why I think for me especially, I feel like it's the golden time, because I've actually managed to do this thing that was kind of an all lifelong dream that I never thought I would actually achieve until maybe 2 years ago. I started to think, maybe I could actually do it full time if I just keep on at it, and I keep on working these evenings and weekends, and I keep on growing it. Maybe in another couple of years it'll be sustainable, and thankfully it is.
Getting back to it was something I was going to chat about, and I forgot about it to say it back then. But chatting to folks who are again are relatively new to this, we were saying about the 3 different factions and the different options within the faction as well. But you essentially, there's no points cost to a model as there in Moonstone. You essentially choose a number of models, and you can, as long as they're within the same faction, you choose what you want. So from a list building perspective, super easy.
Super easy, you agree with your opponent how many models you're going to play. 12 models on the board gives a game time of about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So that's what most people want.
Yeah.
So you can play with less or more models if you want a longer or shorter game, and you can play 2, 3, or 4 players. So if you're playing a 2-player game down at your local club or your game store and you want it to be your evening's entertainment, it's normally 6v6, which is why our box sets are in 3, so you can
Yeah.
join them up like that. For tournaments, we normally play 5 characters versus 5 characters because it means we can get the round durations down to a comfortable 90 minutes where everyone's 95% of people are finished in that 90 minutes. But people bring 8. So at the start of each game, they're selecting which 5 they're going to use in that game out of a pool of 8, because some characters are particularly good against other characters you're seeing placed down on the board, or depending on the way the Moonstone spread is, or who's rolled off and won the initiative, it can kind of affect your choices sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's no points. Yeah, exactly. So one of the sort of design objectives was to keep everything simple that didn't add enjoyment, if that makes sense. Keep people's brain capacity for the bits which are fun and exciting, and keep everything else as clean and simple as possible. So just choose a faction, agree with your opponent how many models you're going to bring that many models. It's the simplest way of doing it. You don't have to look up lists. You don't have to check if your opponent's added it up wrong. It's just so much easier just to put down a certain number of models, basically.
I was going to say I love it as an idea. It's just like, and I'd never heard that before about that kind of, about the tournament thing of like kind of, bring 8 and choose 5. I think that just, it makes it so interesting as well.
And it's absolutely agonizing trying to pick your 8. It's so hard because you're like, I kind of want this core 5 as my kind of go-to for synergy. I know this works, but what if I face this? What if I face that? What's my sideboard? So again, like games like Magic the Gathering have sort of influenced me in this. In Magic the Gathering, you don't have point systems. You just have a 60-card deck that you're building. But in tournaments, they bring a sideboard. I think it's 15. It might have changed in recent years, but you bring your core deck of 60 and then your side deck of 15 that you can swap cards in based, after your first game. I've kind of had that idea in my mind, and I think Guild did something very similar. I think they did something like bring 10, choose 6 or something. So it wasn't like completely original, but I think the idea was brewing in my mind even before I saw that. And I think it works really well. And it's not that hard to paint 8 models and come along to a tournament as well. And we have incredibly welcoming community. It's like one of the best things about working from doing this job is I sort of dip my toe into our Discord and our Facebook page and drop spoilers occasionally and then run away and stuff. And it's such a friendly place. When people join and they're asking for advice, I've seen other communities that can be a little bit hostile sometimes, and it's not like that at all. It's so welcoming, and we have that same welcoming vibe at tournaments. We get quite a few people coming along to tournaments that have it's their first game, or they've only done the demos, but they just made to feel so welcome, and their opponents kind of take the time to talk them through and explain the rules and stuff. So it's been great going along to some of those. I used to play in the first few, but now I just sort of go along and help out and watch and stuff like that.
I love that. I think any game, no matter whether it's brand new or whether it's kind of been around for 15, 20 years, they live and die by the communities and obviously by support from the developer. But if people are not playing it, if people don't love the game, if people don't love the miniatures, those games won't hang around too long. And I think it's nice to hear that Moonstone has not only has a great community in terms of kind of support, but it also has that kind of welcoming feel as well. Because some games feel like the games that can get new people in and are welcoming to new people, and this feels like one of those games. It's got that whimsical feel about it, that it's not overbearingly sort of threatening of where do I start with this kind of huge big sci-fi army or something like that. Or
we're finding quite a few people have messaged me saying, I've finally managed to get my partner to play a miniatures game, or I've got this friend who only ever plays board games, but he's given Moonstone a try. We have sort of tried to make it accessible in that way. We're cutting out points costs and cutting out reference tables and all that kind of thing. So more accessible potentially to people that are used to board games or that sort of thing. And that's really cool, like to hear people say that. Yeah, because obviously we are a small company, so it's quite hard to get the message out in the way that a big company would.
Yeah.
So word of mouth is incredibly important, and people trying the game at a convention or something and then bringing in their play group is basically how it's grown. That's
Yeah.
it's sort of grown from one person liking it, teaching it to someone else who likes it, he's taught it to someone else who likes it. And for whatever reason, we've just picked up a particularly nice group of people. So
I think some of that comes from yourself as well, though, because I think, like, if you had a different attitude, you might have attracted a different kind of crowd. So I think
I also think the fact that people know that I'm reading their comments probably makes the thing a bit nicer as well. Maybe.
So yeah, you can take a bit of credit for that. I'll give you some props for kind of fostering that community as well. But you mentioned there about sort of conventions and stuff. What's your plans for 2023 when it comes to conventions? Have you got a busy lineup for next year? Have you got different plans?
We're going to Beachhead in Dorset in February.
Yeah.
UK Games Expo in June. We went there last year and that was crazy. I basically sold out on the Friday.
Amazing.
And had to drive all through the night back to Wales to load up the car, full to the ceiling again, because it's a big car, but it's a car, not a van, but it's full to the ceiling, drive it back again, just got like an hour's sleep and then was back selling again.
Wow.
So we'll be doing that again, but I'll bring a bit more stock, maybe a bigger van and a few more staff members to help out. I'm going to go to Origins in the US next year, which is also in June, but at the opposite end. I think Origins is at the start and UK Games is at the end. And we've got one more, which I can't remember off the top of my head. I think I've got 4 booked in for next year, but it'll probably increase.
Awesome. Nice to see that you kind of...
obviously, Salute will be
Salute as well. Yeah.
Of course, yeah, that's the other one.
When is Salute next year? It used to be April, but it moved last year.
To April. Yeah, they obviously got very disrupted with both COVID and Harry, who did run it for like 15 years, stepped down from that position. Someone else stepped in, kind of with only like a few months before last year's April slot. So I think they pushed it. Anyway, bit of disruption, but they're back on track for April again. I think it's April the 18th.
Fantastic. And Origins, is that the first time you've been out to the US to showcase it?
Yeah, because I haven't really pushed the game in the US this year, but it's grown sort of organically in that way that I was saying, with somebody maybe backing a Kickstarter, getting their friends into it. So there's a few sort of hubs in America which are really, really engaged with the game, and there's some stores that are ordering really, really frequently. And I think next year I'm going to try and get out there and show my face and try and make it get a bit more exposure out in the States, because it seems like there's an appetite for it at the moment.
Yeah, there's quite a few people live there, isn't there? So it's a good market. It's a good
games, but some of them do. I've heard.
Yeah, definitely one you want to tap into. So next year is looking busy from a convention perspective. What about from yourself and a Moonstone perspective? Have you got big plans for next year?
I've got so many plans. It's just a question of which plan we do. I definitely think we'll be doing a Kickstarter for our new faction next year, probably in the summer. And there'll be probably another direct to retail release of box sets in the spring.
Yep.
So those will be kind of the big kind of noticeable events, but in the background, I'm working with Susie BG Thorne on a role play game.
Oh, amazing!
For Moonstone. So we don't have a release schedule, but what we'll probably do is try and work out like a free PDF for the end of the year, so that people can try out the system and give feedback and that kind of thing, and maybe work towards a launch, sometime in the following years. I've been tinkering away on a Moonstone board game.
Nice.
But other secret ideas for other secret games potentially that Goblin King Games could do. So
Yeah.
there's so many, and then obviously I've got a roadmap for the next 100 or so characters. So I'll be working away with artists and sculptors all year, getting those done. So there's some fun creative stuff for me to do next year. It's not all, it's not all kind of business and spreadsheets. Although that has been a bit.
I like that though, because I mean Moonstone is one of those games that if you're just a hobbyist, if you're just a painter, you like painting models, there's some amazing models that you just don't see in other game systems or from other suppliers in that Moonstone range. And if you just want to paint stuff, I urge you to kind of go and check out the website, check out all of the different sort of minis that's in the ranges, because there is something for everybody. And if you are somebody that likes playing games, like the Moonstone rules, as I said before, simple to kind of to understand, but quite sort of deep in tactics because of all of the card mechanics. And we didn't even talk about the kind of the Moonstones themselves.
No.
How I would say it's a D4 that you basically roll onto the board, and the number on that D4 is how deep it is, how many times you need to dig to get that Moonstone. I think that's a great mechanic that we don't see that kind of stuff, using dice as the objectives as opposed to using dice to play the game. It's just it's such an elegant system, and it's really really kind of good. It's really good to see both the quality of the product and the quality of the rules kind of like living up to each other. So thank you to you for bringing it to market, and thank you to the.
It's my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
And thank you to the community that supported it to get it there, and hopefully this might get it in front of a few more eyes as well. So if you do check it out, then just kind of tell one other person or tell 10 other people, because it like you say, it's through word of mouth how these games grow. And I kind of almost feel a little bit of like sort of camaraderie with people like yourself and companies like yours, where it started from a bit of a dream and it started from a hobby, and here it is becoming like a reality thing. So I want to see I want to see them do well. So
thank you, mate.
Yeah. So I think, have you got anything to add? I think that's a good place to kind of to start to wrap it up.
No, don't think so. It's been a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely awesome. So check out different conventions next year. Make sure you go and see Tom and Moonstone at different conventions. Check out the website. I'll put a link down in the description of this video where you can see it, and check out those new miniatures as well. And other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.